The Northern Scientist and the Rain Engine. In 1931, a man returned to Kano carrying something the colonial world was not prepared for. His name was Malam Idris Gwaram, and he had spent 11 years studying atmospheric engineering in Berlin and Hamburg. He did not announce his return. He came home quietly, with wooden crates, rolled blueprints, and a silence around him that the people closest to him could not explain. Gwaram built his machine in 6 weeks using locally sourced iron, copper coiling, and a pressure-driven atmospheric system he had spent nearly a decade perfecting on paper. The colonial district officer who heard rumors of the project dismissed him as an educated eccentric, a man playing with metal and ambition too large for his station. Then the first demonstration happened. 17 minutes after activation, rain fell over a dry stretch of farmland outside Kano that had not seen water in 4 months. It was not a drizzle. It was a steady, directional rainfall covering nearly 2 kilometers of cracked earth. Farmers stood at the edge of their fields with their hands open. Crops that had already begun dying showed visible recovery within 3 days. Word spread the way only impossible things spread, fast and whispered. The second demonstration was less private. It drew a crowd of over 300 farmers, 2 British surveyors, and a Christian missionary who wrote about it in a letter that was later confiscated. The machine worked again with greater intensity than the first time. Gwaram stood beside it and said nothing. He had already seen the faces of the surveyors change. Word reached the colonial administration in Lagos within a week. London received a detailed report within 2. What followed was not curiosity. It was not scientific interest. What followed was a decision made in a room Gwaram would never be allowed to enter. Colonial authorities arrived at his compound on a Tuesday morning with written orders, administrative documentation, and armed escorts. He was arrested under a colonial provision that allowed detention without formal charge if a subject was deemed a risk to civil order. His machine was dismantled piece by piece over the course of a single afternoon, each component catalogued and loaded onto a government transport heading south. His blueprints were seized. His correspondence was taken. His German contacts were notified through back channels to distance themselves, and they did. The patents he had filed through a German intermediary in Frankfurt were transferred within months to a private archival body in London and sealed under administrative privilege with no review date attached. Gwaram was moved to a holding facility outside Kaduna. He was not tried. He was not formally charged with any crime that was ever made public. He died 8 months later inside that facility. The official colonial record listed the cause of death as fever. No independent examination was ever conducted. No family member was present. The machine was never recovered. No government program ever attempted to replicate his work. The farmlands outside Kano returned to drought the following dry season, and the season after that. Then, in 1987, a doctoral researcher at the University of Maiduguri was cataloging a colonial estate document box that had sat untouched in a university storage room for over 2 decades. Inside it, folded between land survey reports, was a partial blueprint. The measurements were precise. The engineering was unlike anything in the documented literature of that era. In the upper right margin, written in faded English ink, was a single handwritten note. It was not signed. It said only this: "Do not let the North feed itself."